Hello everybody, this is Snarist, and welcome back to the continuation of my coverage of the Ninja Gaiden 4 2 Masters DLC story. And this is Master Ninja Difficulty Guide, S rank, and this is Mission 2, Forested Path. A little bit of a mouthful there, but we're coming close to the halfway point of the DLC story, not very long, as you can probably tell. And this mission is made specifically for Ryu, so this will be a little bit easier if a little bit longer. There's going to be a couple of sequences that are kind of drawn out because I'm being real careful not to get killed. And while I still think I do the best in the previous mission compared to this one, I have to point out as well that in the final mission I do actually die quite a bit, but because I don't actually get killed until I get to the final boss, and I do die a few times and use a bunch of items, I always go retry battle, because I think it's too late and I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway, and then I go restart from checkpoint, just so I can go back to the store, and even though I don't need to buy anything, it saves me a death. So if that's what happens with you, because that final mission, because of the final boss, is going to be the hardest one there is in this DLC story, if you don't want to have a poor score, then make sure you get to the last part of it, which is about 10 minutes long, through a series of fights. 10 minutes in total, roughly. And before you get to the final boss, you got your last shot, make sure that you haven't died, or if possible, don't use any items. So that way you get a much better score overall, so that even if you do use items in the final encounter, if you still get killed, or you feel like you used too much before you get the final blow, then just pause and go restart from checkpoint, or just go ahead and restart from checkpoint when you die. So that way you can save up on having actually died. That's actually a trick that I use to complete the final mission of the main game with Ryu, getting an S rank on Master Ninja, because I didn't die or use any items until the final boss, and then I did use some items during that boss, but I technically ended that mission without any deaths, or maybe one or two, but not enough to seriously impact my score despite dying a bunch. So the more you know, I guess. I suppose I'll use this as a chance to sort of talk more about the weapons and everything. So with Yakumo, he's got Solitaire, which is a scythe, and I think it's cool. I definitely think it's very cool. Scythe weapons definitely are underrated in gaming. Like, to me, my favourite scythes and just in fiction in general are still Death's scythes from Darksiders 2, the scythe from Dante's Inferno that you get after killing Death, funnily enough, and Ruby's scythe from Ruby. In fact, she might actually have my favourite. I love the colour scheme, I love the mechanical look of it, and I really like Yakumo's scythe as well. Like, it's definitely up there now, but as far as how it functions in the game itself, it just doesn't work. Because while on easy and normal, or hero normal, the weapon is still good as is any other weapon. It's flashy, it definitely can be effective, but unless you're an absolute master at the game, and you're a true Ninja Gaiden veteran, unlike myself, then you can make you can make short work of these enemies and everything. And I'm just not able to do that. So whether it's on hard or Master Ninja mode, yeah, I can't make it work on those high difficulties. And it's the same with Ryu's weapons. Because while it is fast, you're still leaving yourself vulnerable to animations that could be quite detrimental. And by the way, I left a cut there because I did get killed in the sequence. Believe it or not, because I didn't have my Incense of Rebirth that I ended up using at the end of the last mission, there's been no store so far, so I didn't actually get a chance to buy any more. So I did get killed during here, and this is the only time I've died during this mission. But luckily I'm going to do quite well for the rest of the way, so I'm still going to get the S rank, no problem. And it's just way too flashy, and it's just not practical enough for those high difficulties. Whereas his katanas, they're still not super great in certain moments, but overall it still is the better of his weapons. And something else to keep in mind as well when it comes to Abyssal mode, or Abyssal Road in particular, and why it's causing me so many problems, I feel like, is because even though Ryu is my ideal choice, I've got all 5 accessory slots opened up as Yakumo, but I forgot why what I needed to do with Ryu, but with Ryu I've only got 4 slots, but to be honest, there is no need for a 5th slot. The only 5th accessory I would have to fill in that one gap is probably, I think it's the Strife God's Orb, where you get a little attack increase after obliteration kills, but that's not my problem. My problem is with the bosses. Like the floor 90 boss with against Seere and her like final form in particular. That's the one thing that gets me. And there's always enemies surrounding you that little attack increase doesn't really matter. It could help definitely, but I also know that I don't have the full like health upgrade because it's been so long since I played the main game on my PlayStation 5 and having all the upgrades and everything. You look at my health bar right now, that's not as high as the health bar can be. It can be a little bit higher, but not that much higher. So I'm probably only missing like one upgrade, like 1 or 2 more materials to get that one little push over, a little bit extra. So because on Master Ninja everything kills you super quickly, it wouldn't make much of a difference, and that's why I don't really care about going back and trying to max out my health, because it means so little in the long run. I mean, you could argue, like, well, what if you're getting pretty close to dying, but that little health increase would have saved you? It's like, it's not likely, and if I need to depend on that to get through, then I'm not doing it properly, and I don't deserve to make a guide to show people it. You know, it's not just a matter of creating a guide to show you how I managed to do it my first attempt and, you know, that you can be rough sometimes and get through it. No, the main point of a guide is to show you how to easily do it. You know, if there is an easy way to accomplish a task, you don't often show how rough you can be while still getting it done. You only do that if what you're working on doesn't really matter to you that much, or if it's not, you know, the project itself is just kind of a nothing burger where it's like, this isn't impressive, really, there's not going to be much of a chance to show off, there's not going to be too many people like bothering about etiquette, and they just want to know how to get it done. And I definitely understand that. But I think it's your duty as someone who makes guides that if you know how the enemies work and you know how the level is designed and you know how every item and weapon you have works, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do this with a little bit more tact. You know, there is no reason why you can't show people how to effectively get through it so that they know what to expect. Because you can tell people to have fast reactions, you can tell people to be ready for something, and I definitely do that in some of my other guides. But it's just not that simple sometimes. Sometimes you really you need to show people what's going to happen, and then you need to tell them what's going to happen before it happens, and then show how you reacted to it, or showed how you prepared for its arrival. Because I've gone through this before myself. You know, I played through this DLC story a couple times before this. I understand what to expect from all this. And I do apologise for the lack of audio on the game's part. You know, the whole point of me getting it on PC again was so that I could, have the synced up audio, and so I could, have it flow a bit better for you guys. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure this was a time where I think my headphones went long enough without hearing any sound or producing any noise, so it turned off itself when I swear I could have had it on and charging up at the same time. But, whatever happened, I was listening to something else as well, because that's just sort of what happens when I've played games that I don't need sound for, or, I know what the sounds are, I know what to expect, I don't need to listen in for cues, or I can react fast enough that I don't need any sort of noise or feedback or anything like that, audio feedback, and so I listen to other things as well. That's how I can balance playing a game and getting footage and getting the audio and everything ready, while also being able to listen to my usual YouTube and other bits and pieces, so I can sort through it. Because that's just sort of how my brain works. Sure enough, I like to listen to the game and all that. That's fine, but I've only got so much time in the day before or time in the weekend before I got to go back to work and everything, and that's a long time. So. And I got a lot of videos to sort through. Every once in a while throughout the year, I'll get caught out by game showcases or trailers or essay videos that I take a particular interest in, or gaming or world news, something that's going on that I want to know about. And I just got no time to focus on it individually, so I do know what's being talked about and everything, and that's fine, but I tend to just focus sort of, like semi-focus on what's being said in the background while I'm doing what I'm doing. I can just sort of switch my brain off and carry on. So here I'm in a bit of a predicament, as you can see. It all started just like maybe 20 or 30 seconds ago where I was going to get a charge up for an ultimate and I got knocked out of it. But there was red orbs everywhere, so I had no idea why it didn't charge it up straight away. You know, when you play this game enough, when you play any game enough, you make certain actions and movements and you know what to expect. But when the game doesn't do it, it just kind of throws you off. It's like, wait, hold on, that's not how that works. Something's going on here. And that's sort of how I felt about Abyssal Road. Because, you know, as I said, it took me like 50, 55 minutes to get through the first 80 floors. You know, no deaths, no revives, no nothing, no items. And yet, for some strange, not no items, but, you know, no revives or anything like that. And you just wonder, how is it that took me less than an hour, but just to get up 10 floors and only get as far as 13 floors out of 20 that I need? You know, how does that take me 4 to 5 hours? Like, what's going on here? By the way, this sequence here kind of sucks because the Black Spider Ninjas actually take quite a bit of damage. Like up close, 1 Nimpo is enough to finish the job, but from a distance, it'll probably take about 2 Nimpo, and they spawn from one side to the other, and you've only got so much key to work with, so you're not going to have a constant supply unless you use items. And I wanted to use as little items as possible because I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to get the S rank in this mission because I died once and I've used a bunch of items and stuff. You know, I was worried I wasn't going to get it no matter how well I did, but, you know, just make sure you save up your key gauge, use your Nimpo, clear them out, and keep still to avoid the red orbs flowing into you, and just wait for them to get closer, charge up your ultimates, and then just go in and do it. Because, yeah, if you start moving normally, then eventually those red orbs are going to flow into you, but if you want to save them for your ultimate charges, then you want to hold your block stance and move back and forth. Look at that nonsense. Like, I don't have a problem with enemies being able to block your attacks, and I don't really have a problem with enemies. So just like that, the red orbs just went into me suddenly, and I have no idea what the hell, because I didn't even move, I didn't do anything. They just went into me, and I was saving them for the ultimate. Now, I have no problem with these enemies blocking, or any enemy blocking tons of attacks and all that sort of thing, because you've got plenty of tools to work around it. My biggest problem is that when they hit you, and they stun lock you into being killed, and you're not able to block, parry, you're not able to dodge away from it to get away, you're not able to push any button to sort of push them off or repel them. You might be thinking, well, it's Ninja Gaiden, you know, that's just how it is. Like, that doesn't necessarily make it good design. You know, people get that confused as well a lot of the time when it comes to older games. It's like, oh yeah, older games, you know, they were rough, you know, how could you think that they're better than what comes out nowadays? It's like, they were made to feel good and to handle well before anything else. Sure, some of them had a degree of jank, but for the most part, the games flowed very, very well. You know, you had all sorts of tools to survive. And if you wanted the game to be challenging as well as feeling good, because, you know, feeling good and having fun was the main point. But if you wanted that extra challenge, you know, it was there, but the core gameplay still flowed well enough that it worked. Where it's the problem with this is that when it comes to Yakumo in particular, it's the biggest problem I have, is that a lot of his animations just feel really awkward and jank and slow, and, you know, it takes ages to recover and everything. It's sort of the problem I have with, what am I going with this? I know there's another example I was thinking of, and I apologize if you hear that. I'm sharing this home with other people. You know, just try to ignore that the best you can. I'm just trying to stumble with my words here. And, you know, games being hard can definitely be a definitive way to understand them, but they have to play well. Ninja Gaiden games are known for being tough, and that definitely is part of the appeal, but they still feel really good when they get into work. So Ninja Gaiden 4 definitely feels very janky at times, or unresponsive, but part of the main appeal is that, you know, you're moving like a ninja, you feel like a ninja, you're moving around like crazy. So no matter what complaints I have with this game, it does feel good to play, and that's ultimately why I put up with the jank and the unresponsiveness. That's why I forgive a lot of its problems and can move on from it, because the core gameplay feels good, and you know it does make you feel powerful. It's just that every once in a while they remind you you're not really all that strong, because they do things like this, pork. But the problems I even had with the older Ninja Gaiden games, I never had the problems that I have in this game. So, because for the most part, everything worked pretty well. Um, Everything worked pretty well. You had, the camera was always in a pretty good position. All your attacks could slash multiple people. You had different weapons for different tools. Whereas in this game, you get hardly any weapons. The camera often crawls up your butt, and you can't really see anything properly. The soft lock doesn't really work the best. Enemies that are right next to you that you want to attack suddenly, it just doesn't work out. And see, a game like this would probably benefit from having more open environments rather than fighting indoors, so that you can have a fixed camera, so that way you could use the right stick to change the soft lock targets. Whereas a game like this that has a free-flowing camera and soft lock, when you want to turn around and see what you're striking, because enemies can hit you from off screen, especially with projectiles, you want to see what's around you. But every time that you go to flick the stick to change the camera, what ends up happening is you're changing the soft lock target. So not only are you changing where you're looking, and it doesn't pacify enemies, but at the same time, you're completely changing what target you're going to strike. So you could be looking around, like of your right shoulder, and the moment you see an enemy, you want to go and strike him, but because you've changed the camera, the soft lock has changed what would have been their enemy, possibly. It could have been anything else, it's all random. It'll change the soft lock target to something else, and so you'll go completely past their enemy and attack something else. And that enemy could have been a smaller one that you could get up in the air to, Izuna drop, and then you could come back down into an ultimate, or it could be a bigger enemy that you need to deal with, but instead you're throwing yourself away from them into a smaller enemy, or, God forbid, into a bigger enemy that can tank a lot of damage, and when it uses a special attack, well, you're screwed. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure no other Ninja Gaiden game has that function where enemies have these, red exclamation mark attacks that you can interrupt, or, you can't block them, otherwise it does massive damage or it breaks you completely. And I have no idea what happened with the footage there, or footage is bugging out. But, I don't think any other Ninja Gaiden game had that sort of thing. And, it makes sense as well, because I did play Ninja Gaiden 2 Black back when it came out, I think it was last year, and it was definitely up there as one of my favourite games of last year, but I didn't even really feel all that attached to it, because even though it was a good game and everything, I felt like a lot of the dodging felt unresponsive. Like I was doing everything the game wanted me to do, but just wouldn't work, and the game was kicking my ass, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just felt completely underprepared, fighting bosses that were so much more capable than me, and I definitely think the Souls curse, the Dark Souls curse exists within this game with certain bosses, especially with Seere, because it wants you to fight them like as a Souls boss, but you feel so, you're supposed to be high flying and moving around like crazy, but you're just so incapable. And yeah, I just can't help but feel like I kind of skipped out on Ninja Gaiden 2 Black a little bit. Like I know people have their favourites and everything. I think Ninja Gaiden 2's, I want to say Sigma is people's favourite Ninja Gaiden 2 version, or maybe it's the original vanilla version. I don't know what it is. I know it's definitely like 10 times harder than this game, but I at least feel like Ninja Gaiden 2 would be more fair. Well, not necessarily fair, but it would be more like honest. This game just doesn't feel very honest at times. Yeah, I've rambled enough. I'm getting out of breath. My throat's hurting, and I have no idea what the hell else I'm supposed to talk about really. But I have a bit more to say towards the boss at the end of this mission. At the end of the next mission. Yeah, I'm still going to be going and playing Ninja Gaiden 4 to go through Abyssal Road, just so I can try and clear out that last section. But if I can't do it within a week or two, I'm just going to give up on it entirely and uninstall the game and wait for the next one to come out, or wait for the next update if there is any more. There's not too much else to really say with this game. It has so much promise, and I definitely think it was pretty exciting the first time around, and it definitely has its charm. And I don't think it's as bad as people say it is, but I definitely think it was robbed as far as action game goes, or, the gameplay. I definitely think it's one of the better games of last year. But that being said, I just can't keep making excuses for it when it's another one of these games where the DLC actively takes away and makes the overall game worse. So, yeah, that's a little frustrating, but it is what it is. And I have no idea why the assassination didn't work then. You know, I feel like this room you can very easily assassinate these enemies, or maybe they're doing it to trick you. It's like, if it's to trick you and they know that you're there and they're waiting for you to strike the wrong target before they all leap on you, then why does it show the prompt, you know? Because then when the prompt doesn't work and you don't know what's going on, all it takes is just like half a second and then you're screwed. I suppose something else interesting to bring up is, you know, sometimes when you open up these chests, it gives you these red orbs to give you some health back without you using an item. I think that's a good addition. I don't know if they've done that for the main game, and I don't really care to go back and find out, but, you know, it would be kind of cool if they did. And I do appreciate that you get seemingly tons of ninja coin and, you know, weapon XP in this mode as well, because I can definitely upgrade everything right now if I wanted to, but yeah, I just don't really bother. You know, I've already done like 100 plus hours on my PS5 of this game, and, you know, I've played it to death and I enjoyed it enough, but, you know, this is pretty much it for me. By the way, I'm pretty sure these guys got a buff, because I don't remember them having eyes on their body, and they just seem a lot more aggressive than they used to be. They definitely were dangerous, but this version, or at least in this DLC, they seem way more dangerous. It's sort of similar to how you get that weird sort of wet white blanket dog or whatever the fuck it is. It has like a weird poison effect to it whenever they show up. It's just really bizarre. So I'll just use this chance to talk more about the boss at the end of this. At the end of this mission, you're going to be fighting the second half of Seere, where it's a boss that uses these hammers, and it's a lot, you know, it's a lot more aggressive. It gets right up in your face, and when it has the whole, you know, interrupt the prompt, or, you know, get ready to avoid it, the real problem I have with it is that sometimes it delays, sometimes it doesn't. It's all random, and so you have to kind of predict. And that's where I said that this game has sort of like a Dark Souls curse, where an enemy or a boss has an established attack. It's got things it can do, but if you're ready for it and the AI knows you're ready for it and it can tell, it'll intentionally delay and wait for you to make a mistake before it launches the attack. And I think that's just fucking bullshit. But in this, you know, I already feel like I failed, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it really. I'm just going to go into the boss fight. I'm going to use a War Brew and an Iron Brew to give myself more defense and attack boosts. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use Rio's Nimpo. And so if you haven't used any items apart from maybe the odd revive here and there, you know, you're going to have tons of XP by the end of this anyway, so feel free to just go crazy. Now, if you're lucky, this boss will open up by doing an unblockable charge attack, but if not, they'll always do about 2, sometimes 3 attacks and then do a charge attack. So feel free to go ahead and do that. If you have to charge up your ultimate for as long as I did just then, your ultimate's going to bounce off, or at the very least, wait for them to try and attack you. But if you're too close, then the attack's going to come very, very fast and you may not be able to react in time. So that's a pretty easy way to kill the boss, and that's the end of this mission. And I'll see you guys at the end of the next one.